Commissioner Piercy?
Here.
Commissioner P?
Here.
Commissioner Dodd? Commissioner Cush?
Present.
Commissioner James? Commissioner Boyd?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Present. First, we'll have the approval of the May and June minutes. We do the May first.
Yes, Chairman. I'll go ahead and make a motion for both. I have reviewed the May 7th, 2024 minutes and the June 4th minutes. I found nothing out of order and make a motion for their approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? All right. All opposed? Comments? No, we have no public comments. So first we'll have a Singer Road property maintenance. That will be, who's going to present that? Mr. Mayor? Mayor Carr? Okay.
Property because of it's grown up. As you know, the Chamber of Commerce is looking at potentially finding suitors for that property that would benefit the county. We have not received any serious offers on that, but as a result of the visitation by Chairman Johnson, what we have decided to do is to clean up the property. The barns have not been removed, but before we can move the barns, we need to mow the property. We need to remove the scrub trees that have grown up out there for the last several years. We need to probably have those removed. And then also, because people can access it from two different entry points, they're depositing a lot of trash. We got everything from household trash to couches and desks and furniture and branches. And so I've talked to Adam Dodd. I met with Adam Dodd out there last week, and we're going to begin the process of first mowing it, then removing those scrub trees, deforesting those smaller trees, and then hauling off the trash, and then we'll look at assessing the removal of the barns to see if they have any value that the county can sell. And so that's the plan. According to Adam, we're going to begin that immediately. We already put out some feelers about seeing if the property could be cut for hay in exchange the hay for the mowing of the property, and we looked at that for the last week or 10 days, and it didn't appear like anybody was interested. So we're just going to go ahead and bush hog it. And with that, I'll take questions.
All this will be handled in-house with
as of right now, yes, sir.
existing money, I guess, from your budget, or
I would imagine won't come from the mayor's budget. It'll probably come from Adam's budget, Mr. Dodd's budget. If it requires from another department to be transferred, we'll come back with a budget amendment.
any questions? Mr. Cush.
Thank you. Mayor, I believe this is likely the same property that prior to your mayoralship, and this Public Works Committee will probably surely remember. Is this the same property that was talked about under Mayor Ketron, where we had talked about maybe putting a little recycle center, right? And did it not have a rail spur connection?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right. So, and I missed the very opening part of your dissertation. Did you say the city may be interested
No,
in?
the chamber is looking, because of that rail spur. Patrick Kamak with the chamber has identified that it's approximately 17, 19 acres.
Right.
With that rail spur, his classification was kind of a unicorn. It's unique because of that rail spur.
Okay.
And so it has a significant value for the right kind of tenant. Obviously, we're going through a kind of an economic period where people are hesitant to expand or to build out a new facility. But he believes that property, its location to I-840,
Right.
2440, and that rail spur make it quite unique.
Okay.
And so we're just looking at options. Obviously, before we entered into any kind of significant negotiation, we would bring a proposal to the commission for review.
And I guess where I'm going with this is, when we had talked about using that property from a recycling or solid waste standpoint, we had caught some flack from the city, from Murfreesboro, because they had it, their long-term vision was that corridor as that, and I can't remember the name of that development. It was like a sports complex, one of a kind of a thing.
Legacy Sports
Yeah,
Complex
yeah.
or something
That
like that.
kinda never-
That was across 840, but it was down.
It
So
was
of
down.
course, now that
Right.
is no longer on the table.
Correct.
But it's interesting to bring that up because I do know that there's some talk about somebody else coming in on that particular. It was the Horde property,
Right, that's right.
if I'm correct. And so now they're talking about some other use for that piece of property, and which would make it difficult to turn that into heavy industrial, which
Okay.
is what a recycling center would be, I think.
Okay. This whole long story that I want to try and, I'm going to make it really short now, is I guess before we would give up that property, I just want to make sure we have looked at all the potential uses that are solid waste or public works or any
Absolutely.
before we
Absolutely.
cut a
And
deal.
quite honestly, there's not a decision for us to make at this point regarding the long-term use of that property.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do, and I think what Chairman Johnson is saying, to make it suitable or even marketable, we need to clean it up. And so that's what we're up here saying is
Right.
we need to mow it, we need to pick up the trash that's out there, we need to put gates out there to keep people from dumping more trash. We just need to clean it up.
Yeah.
So that's what this is tonight.
Because you are correct that rail spur potential is unique and adds tremendous amount of value
does.
for us or some other potential industry. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Might add too, the rail spur, that'll take some research also, because right now the rail spur is for the gas company that's down the street. And whether or not we can tap onto it, we don't know. So that's just, down the road, we'll find that out. That's right. That's right. But there is a community across, Murfreesboro's building a community across, I guess that's still Broad Street in that area, a nice community. So I'm sure that they have the same concern they had before. They wouldn't want the recycling or whatever there, but not to speak out of school, but that was their reason before. Anyone else? Commissioner Piercy.
From our discussions back a few years back, it was a little confused at that part. The county has no ownership of that rail spur whatsoever, correct?
That rail spur is owned by CSX.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And next on the agenda, we have the Sand Hill Convenience Center replacement site in Lavergne. Director Wagner's out of town, so we have Matt Davis to present this. Welcome, Matt.
Good afternoon.
I didn't mean to call you a welcome, Matt, but
So the current Sand Hill Convenience Center has basically just been outgrown by the population that uses it. We process about 3,500 tons of different types of waste through the site right now. The lines of traffic for that site a lot of times wind around Sand Hill Road, and they affect that neighborhood and the schools in the area. It's not the best situation right now. We've been looking at a new site, we'll say very preliminarily. This is, the shaded spot is just north of LaSalle Court and Gingham. Basically, those two roads would be used for ingress and egress. The plan we have here is, like I say, very preliminary, but it leaves about a 200-foot buffer of trees around the property so that it will not be visible to the schools or to the homes in the area. Both of these driveways have utility access and hydrants already, and the property just to the south off both of those roads is already zoned light industrial. Our site we're proposing would require rezoning from low-density residential R1. We played a little bit with the layout. Again, it's very preliminary, but this idea would have traffic entering at the green area is on LaSalle, flowing through kind of an area for cars to stack if there's any weight, and then coming up through pretty similar to other sites with our bulk containers, recycling, and the compactors, and then exiting out on the left side by the red arrow on Gingham. So the county owns this property already. Some of this I've already kind of talked about. The shaded area we talked about or on there is 6¼ acres. We're probably looking at actually developing less of that for budget constraints and just to fit our needs. Right now, there's a $1.4 million fund remaining where we had set aside money for convenience centers that the other 3 have already been rebuilt. The property, again, would be buffered from the schools with that big buffer of vegetation and trees and a fence on our site. The traffic in this center, we don't think will ever be in contact with any of the school traffic in the area for be Lavergne Lake Elementary, Lavergne Lake Middle will be to the north, and then there's the other schools just to the south and west will be Roy Waldron Elementary and their annex. This should never affect their traffic, and it should take a lot of load off the neighborhood streets that have been an issue before too. Repeat myself too much, but our recommendation is that we go forward, develop a site. The mayor, I think, is still looking at some other sites. We would say this is a very preliminary plan, but we wanted to present it to you so that you know where we are in the process. Are there any questions I can help with?
I hate to disrupt the Facebook, but I was wondering if Engineer Hughes could pull up the actual map from the GIS. I Googled Holland Ridge Drive.
So the site that Matt's talking about is right here, and I'll show you a little bit more. So Lavergne Middle School, as soon as this draws, is right here. Lavergne Lake Elementary School is here, and this is LaSalle, and this is Gingham, and it would be in this wooded area right here.
Are those apartments to the south on LaSalle? Or townhouse, residential?
Here, no, it's all industrial, commercial properties. And I can show you on Street View. They look like. So just businesses lining LaSalle and likewise on Gingham. But like Matt said, it's got sewer force main and water. I think there's a 6-inch on LaSalle with a fire hydrant at the end. You can kind of see it down there. And then there's an 8-inch water main with a fire hydrant and a 2-inch force main. So the utilities are there, plus electricity you can see overhead here. So it looks like a pretty good site to us.
Matt, yes, leave it.
Oh, sorry.
Michael, go back one. And then zoom in, if you don't mind, to those light industrial.
Okay.
And Matt, did you say you would use the LaSalle and Gingham as ingress and egress, like one way in, one way out? Or,
Set in stone, but we like that idea
yeah,
that we've talked more about entrance on LaSalle and exit on Gingham.
yeah,
It's not set.
that makes perfect sense. Okay, so what is in the middle? That you've got some raw land in between what looks like one light industry up towards the front.
Oh.
Yeah, right there. What's going on there?
That is one parcel, one industrial parcel right here.
Okay.
They own all the way to the back. So,
All right, so that is not our property. That's a
no,
private.
sir, just this large tract with the
Yeah.
two schools on it.
Okay. So, yeah.
The town of, the city of Lavergne actually owns a right-of-way here and this property here, so this is available as well, but we thought best not to mix traffic that close to the residential.
Mike, how far from the residential area where you got your little cursor now?
Yes, sir.
Does the start of the proposed lot start? How far over?
I think it was around 200, 250 feet, and we were going to keep that heavily wooded, about 250 feet before we got to the neighborhood. And likewise to the school, we can keep that vegetated buffer all the way around it.
The same thing with the schools, you'd keep the buffer.
Yes, sir. Still keep a couple hundred feet of heavily wooded trees in between.
But that still have to go through public hearing. Is that correct? To get it rezoned?
Through their zoning process.
Yes. Right now, the property's zoned R1. I'll show you. There's a map. This is a portion of the town of the city of Lavergne's map. This is the school property here. This green box is where the proposed recycling center would be, the convenience center, and this bluish area is zoned, I believe, I1 industrial.
Yes.
That?
I1.
Yes, I1. So my map's jumping around, sorry. The school is zoned R1. They're residential. It's like 15,000 square foot lots, something like that, yeah.
I reached out to Mayor Cole, and he was okay with this lot, and he assured me that there should be no problems with getting this through all of their hoops they have to jump through as far as rezoning and whatever. And he said it'd be expedited just as quick as humanly possible.
What exactly will this site be used for?
It would be another convenience center. It basically would just replace the exact functions we have on Sand Hill Road already. I would consider it really similar to the Smyrna site that we just upgraded last year.
So it's just a residential convenience center?
Yes.
Looking back at the pictures he showed us with the cars sitting on one side of the road, if the cars were sitting on both sides of the road, can a trash truck still pass through there easily? It looked like it would be pretty close.
Gingham is a lot wider than LaSalle, so there's some possibility there. I would say everything about the site is an assumption right now, but there's a lot of room inside the site for cars to stack. And so I think we would have as good as any site, we'd be able to operate our trucks.
This is the current site down here at the bottom of the screen, and I think the city of Lavergne owns that property right now, and they're needing it for their public, their Parks and Recreation Department.
Mr. Dodd.
Thank you. Matt, have you had any complaints about odor from a convenience center in the vicinity of the schools? Would that be a concern?
No, we don't, I can't imagine, we haven't had a complaint about odor at our sites since I've worked here for 5 years, and this would be the same. It really, with this, the odor's not a big issue because we're basically just packing up the trash and taking it away.
Compactors.
It doesn't stay a long time, and what does stay is kind of contained in there.
Well, the ones I've visited, I've never had an odor, but I've always passed through and back out, so. But
just to add to that, I had a discussion with Bishop Wagner about this, and I asked him if we ever had a problem. He said the only problem we've had at any of our convenience centers is when somebody was feeding cats. They got rid of that, and we had no problem. But as far as rodents or other animals coming in, because I had that concern, I had calls about that, and I was assured by Bishop that we've never had those problems. And this is an updated version of a convenience center. It's not the run-of-the-mill convenience center. I mean, this is top of the line and looks a lot better and run more efficiently.
We do have to be really careful just with everyday cleanliness in the site, but it's something that our attendants and our center coordinator do a very good job staying on top of.
Any other questions? Mr. Chairman Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is probably owned by the county and has been owned by the county since that school system was built down there. I'm not sure what the long-term plans for this piece of property was from Rutherford County, but do we need to bounce off of the Board of Education if they have needs for this piece of property in the future? Would that be a good idea to at least ask those guys if they
I'm
have?
sure we can. That's something I honestly would want to defer to Director Wagner or to the mayor.
Once again, I'm just thinking that we're looking for property all over the place to build schools with, and if we need to expand the school system in Lavergne, this would probably be the ideal piece of property to expand that on. So I just don't want to make sure that we're not putting something on a piece of property that the school board has long-term plans to do something with. So I think we ought to at least bounce that off of them, and the chairman of our health and education committees here, and
Comment?
could we make sure that happens, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Phillips, I reached out to Katie Darby, which is my school board member, and she said at one time, well, she went to Dr. Sullivan, and they said at one time it was mentioned about building a 9th grade academy out there, but she couldn't find anybody else that ever remembered anything about it, and there's nothing in their plans about doing any expansion out there. But she did voice the concerns about the odor and the varmints and everything, and I assured her that wouldn't happen. And she was concerned about people coming out there that would not normally be at the school. Well, they're not going to be at the school anyway, and I'm not sure if I ever convinced her that was true, but I think if she saw this map, she'd realize that I was telling her the truth. Mr. Mayor.
If I may interject, so we did reach out to Trey Lee and inquire as to what the school's plans for this property. He said they had none for the property at one time. There was an opportunity to do a 9th grade standalone school, but those plans they're not in their plans anymore. And so what we'll do is, if we move forward and at the appropriate time, we'll get a letter from Dr. Sullivan stating that they're fine with us moving forward on this.
Any other questions? You have anything else on this map? I got it. Okay, with discussions with the mayor and through our finance director also indirectly, it was suggested that we probably need a motion to, and I can't make the motion, but I'd entertain the motion to move the finances from the Walter Hill site. It's already, the money's there. Move that from the Walter Hill site to the LaSalle and Bingham Road, or we have a second property. If this first priority doesn't work out, we have a second, and that's on Stones River Road. So that would also be in the motion. But to move the money from Landfill Road, I'm sorry, I said Walter Hill, Landfill Road to LaSalle Bingham site, or as a second choice, the Stones River Road. And as Matt said, there's roughly $1.5 million there.
I have a question.
Mr. Piercy?
If we move the money away from the landfill road site, we're in the middle of building our transfer station and hoping that Republic closes in the near future. Republic owns the land. The compactor site we have at Walter Hill now is located on. I looked that they will probably like to reclaim that, most likely. Then what will we use for money for a Walter Hill site if we spend it on something else?
Well, I meant to add that, keeping in mind that we would have to put this money back.
And where will it come from?
That we didn't discuss. That would be for budget.
Because this money's already been set aside for that site is my concern.
Right.
And if we use it somewhere else and all this unfolds as we hope it will, we'll have to have another site at Walter Hill somewhere, and then there'll be probably another $1.4 million plus at that time.
Yes.
To do something different. That's my concern.
And you're correct. We're looking at priorities right now. That's what we discussed, was where's the priority. Right now, the priority is Lavergne. It was Smyrna because of the volume. Now, we've taken care of Smyrna. Now we're moving on to Lavergne. It's just a domino effect. We're trying to straighten out our trash problem across the whole county, but it's going to take a lot of steps.
It's good to look at priorities,
Yes.
but you really have to look at the future along with that.
Right. And we're looking at the future right now. We're stuck with Lavergne. They've run out of land. We're on a piece of property that we need to vacate because the city of Lavergne needs to use that property. It is their property. We don't have a lease there, but they're willing to do a lease until we can get our new facility built. But I started to say maybe it's not urgent, but I consider it urgent that we take care of this problem in Lavergne. They feel like, and have for years, that they don't get a fair shake, and we're just trying to keep them in the pecking order, if you will. Someone, I don't know if the mayor could answer better than I could on that as far as where the money's going to come from, or any ideas, but
So what we're trying to do is meet an emergency need because we've been asked to leave Sand Hill by the city of Lavergne, and that leaves us without a convenience center in the city of Lavergne. Bishop and I, along with Matt and Eric, have identified that, especially on the west side of the county, we don't have enough convenience centers as it is. So we're looking at 2 or 3 different locations in the next 3 to 5 years where we can meet the growth on the west side of the county. Having said that, the Walter Hill Convenience Center is critical to the Walter Hill community going toward I-840. We will replace that convenience center. I have a couple ideas where that may come from, but they're just ideas, but it's our full intent to replace that convenience center in the near term. As a matter of fact, replace it pretty quickly. The idea that Bishop and I have discussed is since because of the transfer station, we're having to widen Landfill Road to 50 feet. It actually makes it now less of a public safety concern by putting that convenience center at its original location where we started construction, if you remember, Mr. Commissioner Piercy, and said, you know what, we need to back off because the traffic on Landfill Road doesn't make it safe for a residential traffic to use as a convenience center. After talking to traffic specialists, they believe that with the widening of that road as a part of the transfer station project, that is no longer as much of a concern as it once was. So what we want to do is we want to have that road complete and then do a good assessment on the safety of that road to provide not only truck traffic but also residential traffic for use of that convenience center, that location. I just passed the gate. I think you know where I'm talking about.
I do know, but I wasn't aware there was enough room in that easement to widen it no further than ditch to ditch.
It's 50 feet, and we're going to use all 50 feet.
That's about ditch to ditch.
Yes, sir.
I don't really have a problem with you working on the Sandhill site. I'm just looking into the future. I've sat here and watched stuff go through before, you know, without any future observation to look ahead, and most of the time it'll come back and bite you in the butt. That's the reason I brought this up.
No, those are good questions, and we are looking into the future as much as we can, but I don't want this committee to think that because we're reallocating those funds because we have emergency in Lavergne, that somehow that Walter Hill Convenience Center is off the table. It is not. It would be literally to be my priority be the very next center, convenience center we build, and the sooner the better.
Any other questions? Mr. P.
You said there are alternative sites. If I'm going to be transferring money, I want to know where it might be going to. Where's the Stones River Road site you're talking about?
Have to call the mayor back up.
We've identified a couple sites. One that the city of Lavergne owns a little bit farther to the north here. This big gravel pad, as soon as this thing will redraw. This big gravel pad, most of this property is owned by the city of Lavergne. They're putting their new public works facility here. I think they're going to have a fire hall here. This is one area we looked at as a potential convenience center site. And then there's another one that we could possibly use here back on the Rutherford County property, but it's got its challenges with close to these two roads, and we're kind of concerned about school traffic in that location.
And also, that secondary site doesn't belong to us, and we'd have to purchase it.
Yes, sir. This one is owned by the city of Lavergne.
And we weren't really considering that third site.
Yeah, we did like this site down here, but they've got plans for it for a community tornado shelter.
And still, we'd have to purchase it.
Yeah, well, the town
or lease, which
right.
I'd rather have our property down there than on a lease.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Second. To allocate the Walter Hill funds to make Lavergne the priority.
Second. Have a motion and a second to reallocate the money from, you want to say Walter Hill or Landfill Road?
Whatever that, from Landfill Road
Landfill
to
Road.
Lavergne. I'm not going to dictate what site. I would prefer it here, but first of all, we just got to get it over to allow Matt to now, let's pick a site and determine. So I'm just going to make a motion to make Lavergne the priority convenience center.
And that's including both sites?
Yes.
The primary and secondary?
Yes.
In Lavergne?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Won't be going to budget, so my understanding, that was what I was told, it won't be going to budget, so we don't need a roll call. It does go to budget. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not speaking against doing this site. I think it's something that's needed for your community over there. But I'd feel a lot better if we didn't have to tie that money right now to this site. I think budget ought to explore if there are other funds available, even within solid waste budget, that could be used otherwise. I mean, that's the only problem I got, is tying it to something we've already allocated money to.
And I would make then trying to clarify my motion, my desire is to move the funds from Landfill Road to Laverne to Sand Hill as a priority, and let budget confirm that movement of those funds, earmark them for Laverne, and then Matt's going to come back to us with which site. Second, do you help me clarify the motion, Kush?
Second.
I'm not really clear on the motion.
My motion is to prioritize Sand Hill over Landfill Road and move the funds to Sand Hill Road, Laverne as a priority. I don't know what site, I'm not prepared to demand that we pick Sand Hill, this cul-de-sac road. I want to give these guys the funds to make Laverne a priority.
That's
my motion. If somebody needs to clarify that, I just want to get the money out of budget over to Laverne and pick a site.
That's really what the first motion was.
That's all. I'm not picking one site over another. I'm saying I want that's my only motion. We can.
A site in Lavergne.
Correct.
And
I will make Laverne the priority and move the funds from Landfill Road to Laverne.
That's what your original motion was.
That's all I want.
That we would reallocate the money from Landfill Road to the primary site, LaSalle Bingham Road.
My original motion was
or to second.
Those words got put in my mouth. My original motion, my intention is to move the money to Laverne without a priority of what site. Budget would like that to be the motion. Budget can consider moving the funds, and then we can dictate which site. That may delay it a month, but it's the first time we've heard of picking a site.
The reason I
withdraw my motion.
The reason I worded that the way I did, asking for someone to make the motion, was under advisement from the mayor and our budget director. That's where that came from. So that's what you're saying you wanted, wasn't it?
I withdraw my motion. It's open for discussion. If chairman of budget can help me word it better. I'm not picking a side.
I'm just trying to understand it.
Yeah.
May I interject? Why don't we send this to budget, and from there look at potential ways to finance this? I think the sticker for some of us is pulling it from a site that we know that we're going to need in the future. And, maybe it will be expedient to do that, but I'd rather discuss that, being able to look at what funds are available. I'd feel better about it. And I want to assure people in Lavergne that I want to go ahead with this. It's just where the money's going to come from is what my question is. So I'd make a motion to forward this to budget without a recommendation of where the funding's coming from, and let budget make that decision to forward to the full commission for the decision. So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to forward the budget, the replacement of the landfill site in Lavergne with no recommendation. Did I get it wrong? Didn't put that in there about
Recommendation
Lavergne.
is to send this
The budget
forward
to
for approval,
research finances.
but for the budget committee to dictate finances.
Okay, so they're going to
And when I say dictate, that'll, of course, have to be approved by the full commission, but I want to be able to look at all the options. You know, it may be that we have to go back and pull some of these funds. You know, I'm committed to helping Lavergne get this done. I'm just saying I want to look at how we're going to finance it.
We want to forward the budget without a recommendation, with a recommendation.
With no, forward the budget with a positive recommendation to go forward with this, with a site that's chosen, but no recommendation on how to finance it. The financing will be talked about and done at budget.
Is everyone clear on that? See everyone nodding. Any discussion?
I think you should do a roll call.
Have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Kush,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Aye.
Thank y'all.
A point of clarity, Chairman, I exhibited some frustration. It's not towards you, it's towards, I was unable to articulate my thoughts, so please don't assume I was frustrated with you.
Well, I appreciate that, but I was frustrated myself because I wasn't understanding it. So no, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Matt. I lost my agenda. A building codes report, Director Tanya Bell. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman. I'm going to do a quick recap of fiscal year 23-24 real fast because we didn't meet last month. So the total number of building permits issued for fiscal year 23-24 was 3,755, which was down about 8% from the year before. Of those 3,755, 741 of those were single-family dwellings, which was down 21% from the year before. The total fees collected, permit fees collected for fiscal year 23-24 was $2,469,716.09. All right, and total single-family dwellings was 741. Was 944. And school facilities tax and development tax for 23-24. Total was, for school facilities tax was $6,861,071.50. Development tax was $70,500. That brings it to a total of just under $7 million. And if nobody has any questions to that, I'll move on to July's report. Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, so July, we issued a total of 539 building permits. Of that 539, 130 of those were single-family dwellings, which is up 75% over the same month last year. Don't ask me how or why, I have no idea, but up 75% from the same month last year. For a total revenue of, for permit fees of $358,799. We completed a total of 1,582 building inspections and drove a little better than 10,500 miles. And if nobody has any more questions, I'll move on to development tax and school facilities tax.
Go ahead.
So in the month of July, we collected $959,043 in school facilities tax and $5,250 in development tax. And I'll move on to zoning enforcement. Zoning enforcement, we completed 276 inspections.
Any questions?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. No questions?
Motion to approve the report.
Motion to approve and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Wait just a minute, I had a question. Just say a random 1,400 square foot home, 3-bedroom. Does the county have any limit or way to limit how many families can occupy that one house?
So we go by the standard 1 and 2 single-family dwelling. A single-family dwelling obviously is supposed to house a single family. What we all can define as a single family, that's hard to define anymore. So no, there is nothing in the code that says there should be 2.5 children in 1 bedroom, 2 adults in 1 bedroom, and et cetera, et cetera. So to answer, a short answer to your question is no. The code does not regulate that.
So if they can get in the house and shut the door, it don't make any difference.
Yeah, I mean, I can't enforce it. I can't go knock on the door and say how many people lives here and have them prove it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I apologize. I meant to have a Part B of the Solid Waste and Convenience Center report, or it'd fall under that. And I'd like to call the mayor up right now to explain something that came up. It's a contract that was signed Friday, and I'll just let the mayor explain.
So Friday, we signed the contract for waste management, but what we failed to do was we failed to ratify it. And the part about the ratification is that it's supposed to come before Public Works and on to Commission. It was an oversight on the mayor's office. We regret it. But we're here to explain the contract, and what you have in front of you is a summary of the contract. If any members of the committee would like a copy of the contract, we're happy to provide that to you after the committee's meeting. If you'll let me know, and I'll be glad to provide you a contract. It's in my office. But what I'd like to do is does each member of the committee or a member of the commission have a copy of this summary? Because I'll be glad to go over some of the high points of that and take your questions. Does everybody have a copy of it? I will begin with, if being so, then I'll begin with item 1. This is a 5-year contract that begins.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a couple of questions
Mr.
before we
P.
dig into the contract? I've looked at the contract, skimmed over it, hadn't dug into it deeply. I don't really see a problem with the contract. The problem I've got is how the contract got to the point that it was signed. My understanding is this should have gone back to purchasing, and we didn't see it return to purchasing. So in my mind, and hopefully our county attorney is here to explain to me why this contract is not null and void until it's gone through the proper procedures and followed through. I mean, like I said, we haven't seen this in purchasing to have an approval. If we had one of our county employees or one of our department heads come in to a bid and then take that bid and run with it without approval, I think there would be consequences. And what I'm asking is to our county attorney, and I'm hoping we have a representative from our county attorney here. If not, I'd say we delay this until we do have, but I want some answers on whether this contract is even valid.
Mr. Hennessy.
Well, I asked Eric Hennessy to come up and address this. Our county attorney was not available for this meeting, but Eric has had a conversation with him about this, and I think he can explain it. There's some discrepancies on what we understand as a normal process and what occurred in purchasing originally. So ask Eric to explain.
So I went back and looked at the RFP for this proposal that went out, and you're correct that normally these come back through purchasing. The RFP that was put out in this particular instance required this to come through Public Works as opposed to going through purchasing for approval. So that was to have occurred around October of '23. Around October of '23 was at the same time that we were dismissing an engineer from the project and that kind of thing. I have asked Nick about this, and my understanding is that if it is ratified at this time, that would be appropriate.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not refuting anything you're saying, but what I've heard from our attorney is that that's not the case, that it has to go back through purchasing. That's why, personally, before I try to ratify anything here, I want to hear from our county attorney.
Nick and I had a conversation about it this morning, and my understanding was he knew that it was coming to this committee tonight, and he was okay with the ratifying it through this committee. But if he says different, then that's fine.
Well, I had also heard from different sources that it either needed to come before purchasing or back to Public Works, and it didn't come back through Public Works either.
Correct, and it should have come to Public Works in October of '23. Well, at the time that would have happened, I went back and watched the video for the October 3rd meeting of '23, and at that time was actually when it was announced that we were discharging the engineer from the project for the transfer station. And so...
That's two different topics.
No, I know. So it should have come October 3rd of '23. It didn't because there was some turmoil, I think, in where the project was going.
Turmoil is irrelevant. It should have come back to Public Works. You can't make excuses why it didn't come back to Public Works.
No, I'm not trying to make an excuse,
Well, yeah,
sir.
you are. There was no turmoil that had anything to do with why this did not come back either to purchasing or to Public Works. We have a new member on the Public Works Committee that never even heard of the RFI, that was totally caught off guard. It was never in the meeting minutes since last year when the RFI was discussed. Bishop never gave us an update on where we were with the RFI, who was the low, who were the potential bidders, where this discussion was going. This committee never got an update from the mayor's office or from the director of Public Works. That is wrong. That is a disservice to this committee, disservice to me as former Public Works chair who worked my butt off for this. It's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face to purchasing, and I'm disgusted with it. So you can make all the damn excuses you want to, but you dropped the ball again by circumventing the committee process, Mayor, and it's not the first time you've done that. So you can apologize all you want, but you backdoored this thing again. So you can silver tongue all you want, but this is not the first time you've backdoored a committee.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question for you.
Mr. P.
And I contacted you beforehand. I want people to know, just to ask that our county attorney be here.
Right.
The reason I wanted to know and have him represented here is if the county commission said, hey, this contract is null and void, what are the consequences of that? And say rebidding it. Just a question. That's a question that, and another reason I wanted our county attorney here.
I understand. But, you know, just like you and I, we can't be everywhere, and I asked and he couldn't be here. So it's the will of the committee, you know, if we want to hold off on this and get the county attorney to come back next month, whatever your will is, that's fine with me. I just need to hear it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying that Waste Management was not the proper choice. They, by all means, they probably are and were.
Agree.
The whole transparency of the thing is what bothers me. The perception of secrecy and non-reporting on a monthly basis by our director, and the silence of the whole thing until it hit the paper, and a lot of folks were caught off guard, and a lot of people have slept since we discussed this 11 months ago in this room. That just has a smell to it. I'm not saying we need to null and void it. I'm not saying that water or waste management is not the proper vendor. I just do not like how this was done.
Thank you. But back to you, Commissioner P. I was kind of, I thought I heard where you were going with it, but I didn't hear it.
Look, everybody makes mistakes, and I'm not trying to throw rocks at anybody. That's a fact. But I concur with Commissioner Cush. This needs to go through the correct procedures. To me, this contract's null and void until it does, because there's been no approval from the commission for it, at least my understanding. I would suggest we postpone doing anything with this until we have our county attorney in front of us so he can explain it to us. How we go about doing that, that's why I wanted them here tonight. You know, what are the consequences of delaying this? My understanding from reading it in the paper is the only thing I've heard about it, it's a done deal. Well, if we pull the cord and say, well, no, we're not going to do this, you know, some of the writing in the proposal or the contract I was reading says if the county refuses funding, then within 30 days it would be void. But, you know, I'm not ready to pull the plug on like that. I'm like Commissioner Cush. Waste Management may be the best people to go to, but how do we know? We hadn't heard the proposals. We hadn't been reported back to. It hadn't gone through the procedures, and that's what I'm asking for it to do, to go through the procedures before we go ahead with the contract, which evidently we already have, and that's why I want answers to it. I would suggest we put this, delay it 4 months, say it next month, and have our county attorney here, or whenever he can make himself available.
Okay, Nick's coming over. So, let's see.
If I could, I'd like to add just a little input to this.
Mr. Piercy.
This is the first time I've seen this, and I've been behind the transfer station for several years. I feel like the committee is kind of left out on a lot of the stuff, but we might want to have the discussion about where the $62 a ton will come from, because in the past we have discussed a fee to the residents, like a new utility, to help pay for some of this. We have had no discussion whatsoever about any of that for probably a year now, since we quit talking about everything but the transfer station. It seems to me like there's a step been left out. You know, maybe we're going to decide over a Coke and a pack of crackers, don't know. But I really would like to know if we're going to discuss that, or, you know, how we're going to put a fee out, or if we're going to charge a fee, or is it going to all come off of tipping fees, we think, or where's it going to land? Because we've kind of left that part out.
I don't want to speak out of school, Mary, you correct me, but I feel like that's what this process was explaining, set aside all the feelings, and I understand them, but setting aside all the feelings, good or bad, we were going to discuss this tonight. Like, you've got it in here, the $62 a ton, and it was open for question, and that would come out, but we kind of got snowballed here and didn't get that far. No, I'm saying, though, it says $62 a ton, and that's what you just mentioned, then that opens the door for your question. Yeah, and I felt like that would open the door for the questions that you're talking about to discuss it. Okay. Mr. Mayor, would you like to explain that? You want to restate the question?
No, thank you. I think I understand the question. So if I understand the question correctly, Commissioner, you're asking me, based on the $62 charge per ton that Waste Management's going to charge us to haul and dispose of the waste that is received at the transfer station to Cedar Ridge, how are we going to offset that cost? That cost will be offset by a tipping fee that'll be charged at the transfer station by the independents and those who use the transfer station. Currently in Rutherford County, there's about 460,000 tons of trash that is produced within the county. Approximately 20% of that, or about 90,000 tons, leaves the county. Currently, Rutherford County convenience centers and the schools produce about 55 to 60,000 tons of trash that goes to Middle Point that is not tipped. The rest of the trash is tipped. And so we will be providing, the county, through this transfer station, will be providing a service to the independents that currently are taking their trash either out of county to another facility or to Middle Point landfill.
So you're standing there tonight telling this committee that our tax-paying citizens of Rutherford County, residential, will get to throw their trash away for at least 5 more years at this facility, or at our convenience centers, rather, for free.
My understanding is that based on the comments of the Republic officials, they anticipate Middle Point landfill to be open for another 2 to 3 years. In that period of time, we and Middle Point or Republic have a contractual obligation with them. We will fulfill our part of that contractual obligation. In other words, they will be allowed to continue to operate per that contractual obligation. That contract includes that we will continue to take our convenience center trash to Middle Point landfill while we receive trash from the independents who are taking their trash to an alternative location. We will charge them a tipping fee for that service.
Let me stand up, maybe you can understand me better.
That's better.
The residents of Rutherford County now enjoy the fact they do not have to pay to leave their trash at our convenience centers.
That's correct. That's correct.
With the working of Rutherford County's transfer station, will the residents still enjoy the same convenience of not having to pay to leave their trash at our convenience centers once the landfill is closed and we're only operating the transfer station?
Excellent question. So it is our anticipation that the independents that we will receive will more than offset the 60,000 tons that it will cost to move that trash. So it is our anticipation, based on the business model that we've constructed and that we've had analyzed, that yes, there will be no additional charge to the residents of Rutherford County using the convenience center.
That's all I wanted you to tell me.
So is this proposed to be revenue neutral?
It's the actual business model would suggest that it would generate additional funds to the solid waste department.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Dodd.
may I, on that vein,
Sure.
my frustration is that we didn't see that business model presented. We had the business model presented after we had received and digested the RFI. to actually place it into the business model. The business model still has, I think, $72 as an estimate, whereas the contract has $62. So I would like to have seen the business model vetted or presented with the contract items before it was signed. To Steve's point, we haven't seen the business model with the waste management components inserted.
So my recollection, Mr. Chairman, is that I presented the business model upon request by certain members of this committee and the commission, and I provided that business model some months ago on a couple of different occasions and was presented that as a handout. In hindsight, maybe I should have presented it tonight along with the summary, but to be sure, the business model has been available for quite some time, and to the extent that I was unable to communicate the specific details of the business model sufficiently, I should have.
From what I'm understanding, though, the business model is not, it's not comparable. The numbers are different. Isn't that what you said?
I would like to have had the opportunity to have that discussion in this forum.
Right.
Because I'm using 50,000 tons at $95 revenue, at $62 in payment to Waste Management, $15.37 in loading the trucks per the contract, and $30 a ton in servicing the $1.5 million at a significant loss. So I would like to have had those conversations so that we could have a dialogue instead of a defensive moment.
Certainly.
So that I could, I don't, because I'm seeing a 50,000 ton as a loss, I'm seeing 75,000 ton as a generating revenue, and 100,000 ton, of course, continuing to more tonnage, the more revenue.
There's some economies of scale, in what you're inferring,
Yes.
is there are economies
Yes.
of scale that the price per ton goes down as the number of tons we process through the transfer station go up. That is correct.
Correct. And I fear that my operating costs are low because I only used Waste Management's $15.37 at their maximum price. But I have seen now through your notes that we still have to do maintenance, we still have to have employees on the scales, we still have to pay utilities, et cetera. So I think I'm a couple $100,000 short in my operational expenses. So to our detriment.
If I can address that, if I may.
And I wish we could have had this before we have a signed contract that we would have to breach. So that
I understand your concern.
and so we can go down this path or not. So please respond.
So if I understand the question, so as we negotiated through this contract, we were constantly trying to, it was a 6-month process that began into January. Nick and Eric and their attorneys worked a lot of hours, and myself included, trying to do what was best, what we thought was for the county. And what we came up with was one of the components in that regard was, it was always understood, and I made that clear to this committee several times, that we were going to get Republic to haul the trash, and then we were going to pay Republic a tipping key for disposing the trash at Cedar Ridge. But then there became the component, well, who's going to, as an example to that, who's going to load the trash? And we, as we looked into that, the equipment investment and the number of people we were going to have to bring on board as county employees to operate the equipment, the loaders, the rubber-tired loaders that work inside the facility. Additionally, the big issue is the liability that the county would assume if we damaged one of their tube trailers. Would be significant. And so MBI, the subcontractor for Waste Management, who we would contract with, said, we will load the trailers and take all liability and remove the cost of loading the trailers and the cost of buying that equipment to load the trailers. And so it was a significant reduction in risk for the county that doesn't have any experience in loading this kind of equipment, and the potential damage we would have incurred if we had taken it on. So At my instruction, I asked Nick and Eric to negotiate within the contract. That is not reflected in the business model. You're correct. The loading, the transportation, and the deposit of the trash. And so that's what you're seeing in this contract. So right now, the business model only includes 1 or 2 employees.
And I regret that you signed this without concluding that other first. I think we deserve to hear the business model come to some understanding with their contractual fees.
I don't disagree with that.
I would find it difficult to ratify this, if that's the correct word. I don't see how this could come out of here tonight.
Understood.
But I fear we may be in breach, so I hope Nick's here ready to. If he's not here, that we can't, I'll go back to, I need to hear some numbers. If he's not here, we can't.
He's here. Nick, would you come up, please? Okay, thank you for coming over, Nick.
I believe I'm at a disadvantage because I've not been in this meeting. So
I was going to say who has the first question, and we'll kind of catch you up.
please, happy to answer any questions.
So,
Well, most of us sitting here, well, I say most of us, myself, I'll just speak for myself. I don't feel like this contract is valid whatsoever because it has not gone through the committee process. Had the sheriff's office or one of our other agencies that do a bid process went, took the bids, looked at them, took them under advisement, which is basically what happened at purchasing, and then did not return, but went ahead and started and wrote a contract and agreed to it, I think there'd be dire consequences. In this case, nobody's reported back to purchasing, and to me, that's what should have happened. And to me, this contract is null and void because the mayor does not have authority to sign a contract without approval from the legislative body, and that hadn't occurred. That's the first thing. 2, if we decided that this contract is null and void, what are the consequences of us not agreeing to this contract even though the mayor has signed it without our authority? And 3, can we rebid if we wanted to? You know, this may be a wonderful contract. We don't know. We've been kept in the dark on all this.
Okay. So I think as I stand here, in the best interests of the county, I don't think it's appropriate for me to opine tonight publicly on whether the circumstances that have led us here make this contract null and void. And so any sort of opinion in that regard would be one that I would give to anybody individually or in some other mechanism. Just call me and we can talk. I hope you can understand the nature of that, because as the lawyer, while I'm in a public forum, I don't ever want to place the county in a situation where there's any sort of admission or other negative adverse consequence that could come from relaying to you a legal opinion. With that being said, one way to cure any sort of possible procedural defect in the approval of this agreement would be to vet it here and for the commission to ratify it and ratify the mayor's action in signing the agreement. So that is an option that was presented before this body for consideration to alleviate any sort of question that was asked by Chairman P. Was there a second question, or is that, Mr. P has left?
I don't have a question, but Mr. P asked me to apologize. He had a medical emergency. He had to leave.
Understand.
I know he asked if we could rebid.
I'd have to look into that if this commission, or if this committee is not in a position to make a motion to send a recommendation to the county commission to ratify this, then we have to look at any potential other options that could be on the table. I imagine Waste Management would need to be consulted in some way about this, and that would be also part and parcel of how the county would deal with this.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Dodd.
I would not have approved this without some precursor information about what the effects of these costs are, or how the costs are going to be paid for, or tipping all these other elements. I'm not comfortable. So I need to know if we're going to get sued if we delay this a month. I want to know if we're going to get sued if ultimately we would have done this differently. And you can't answer that right now. So I don't know how to I don't know how we vet this without putting you in this quandary of making these determinations that aren't fair of you to make in this forum.
A suggestion could be that this body doesn't act on this tonight. You've still got a week before the commission meeting, and if anybody would like to call me and talk to me about the legal ramifications of the actions, I'm happy to take those calls and talk with you about it.
The night of commission, could we possibly have executive session, and you could give us all these answers, and then...
As I stand here, I don't know, but if we can...
I mean, that's possible, isn't it?
Possibly.
That's our choice.
Well...
That's what I'm asking. Or is it too late?
No. I can talk to you about that after this.
Could there be a series of questions or executive session, and we somehow defer this to our meeting next month, or purchase this next meeting? Or again, I think I'm just circling back to or would that put us in breach? And nobody knows how to answer that.
Well, the way the contract is written now is that it begins January 1 and can be mutually agreed to be pushed back depending upon when the transfer station is completed. And so there's no labor being performed or work loading, anything like that. The waste transfer station's not up and running. And I'd venture to say, based on the individuals in this room and others that will be apprised of this, will have certain opinions on it as well. So I think it's important for this body to be careful in what it does and what it's talking about. Obviously, you want to vet this publicly, but in terms of the legal ramifications, based on those who pay attention to these meetings, we need to be cognizant of that.
Can we table this 30 days or not?
You can do that, but again, I wouldn't want you all to not have the option to bring this up at the commission meeting if you wanted to. And so if you table this for 30 days and somebody wants to bring this up at the commission because dynamics have postured their way into allowing you all to make a decision which could involve ratifying this agreement, we wouldn't want the possibility to have the Public Works Committee stand up and say, no, we're not going to hear this, we deferred it. So I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm just trying to say leave your options open.
Being involved in this like I have been for the last 10 years, when it all comes down to the end, we'll most likely have a contract with Waste Management. There's not that many people that truck trash. There's not that many people that own a landfill. I couldn't imagine us having a contract with Republic should they have an expansion and haul our trash from our receiving station across the hill to their dump. Now, I can understand everybody's tiff about the process this was worked through, but I truly feel like when it's said and done, and of course, there's some information on the money that I would have loved to know. The mayor answered the question. Hope to God he can hold tight, but it's going to be a big chunk. But it'll come back down to this same contract, and to avoid being sued, breach of contract, I say we pass it on to the full commission with no recommendation and hash it out there.
Was that a motion?
That'll give everybody more time to cipher what's in this. Maybe call Nick between now and next Thursday night at our full commission meeting to maybe answer the questions you've got and throw it on the table at the full commission. Yes, sir, that's a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send this to the full commission. Wide open was the wording. And to be decided by the full commission what to do on this.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Cush.
Nick, no doubt you worked endlessly or countless hours on the legal part of this 28-page contract back and forth, assuming with the waste management attorneys. So from a legal standpoint, I'm confident that the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. I think the hang-up, or maybe the frustration or the missing link, is some of the financial questions that Commissioner Dodd, Chairman Dodd has brought up, Chairman Pease brought up, and others. I'm going to ask, I'm not going to put Michael on the spot, but I'm going to ask him, did you have an opportunity, Michael, to look at some of these financial things that have brought a concern to us? Or between now and the commission meeting, can you and the mayor give Chairman Dodd, Chairman P, Budget Committee enough information for them to feel better about a ratification and make the math work for them? I don't know how involved you were on the numbers is what I'm asking. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but you either know about the numbers or you don't. So it's a simple question, I guess.
Well, I can tell you two things. One, you didn't ask, but I'm going to answer it one way. One question you didn't ask. I checked this for two things. One is a part you didn't mention, but I checked it to make sure that this would go along with compliance with our bond issue. So that's one of the things we check. We do stuff like that, and it did pass that test per se, not really an actual test. The second thing is I did have high-level discussions with the mayor's office. I was not involved in the rates that you were talking about earlier, but I did have some numbers discussions and felt comfortable about it enough that it didn't need to go to budget from here. And if you recall, during the budget process, we added, I believe it was at least the attendant is already in the budget for this year to run the scales out at this new transfer station. But from what I saw, based on recollection, when I looked at the mayor's business model, it was more conservative in nature, and that the rate he was running was higher than I believe what was in the contract, and the gross profit margin there was sufficient enough to cover the hauling fees. And so that's where I looked at it from that high level, and I felt okay with it based on assuming the estimates of the trash tonnage were good, because that's not my area of expertise. So I felt comfortable from that standpoint, but that's kind of the extent I looked at it. I hope that helps.
Any other questions for Michael?
Just that I would ask for a spreadsheet or a narrative or a presentation of the assumed tons, that may not be for you, that may be from, okay.
Yes,
So
from the mayor
so
or-
from a discussion, we motioned a second to bring it next week. And I don't know if it's appropriate to say it during discussion, but I request that we have the business, the model of tons anticipated, therefore and the tipping fee and the revenue and so forth. It could be loose, it doesn't have, but let's hope we can discuss that as part of our approval at the full commission.
Maybe, just a thought, maybe you could submit that to the mayor and he would arrange for all that to be there, so there's no misunderstanding, and then it's not in the motion.
Yes,
so,
not part of the motion.
Okay, if you do that, that'd be fine. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Chairman Phillips.
I think Chairman P. kept bringing up the purchasing committee. Would this, bringing it before the full commission, bypass the purchasing committee, or is there a way to, in essence, get around that? Nick, do you have a...
Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, and so can Eric, but I believe the RFP, when this went out, stated that it would come back to Public Works.
Right.
But somebody can correct me on that, and I think that's why it was really supposed to be kind of in conjunction with both, but I believe the RFP that was sent out by the mayor's office said it would come back to Public Works. That's my recollection.
That was out of the ordinary, but that's what we asked for, and that's what
I believe
we got.
that's what this body asked for when before they put that out, so.
So the answer would be no, it doesn't have to go before purchasing, correct?
I think as long as it went through this committee and commission, that's going to supersede anything purchasing would do. And that's what the RFP called for as well.
It was supposed to come back to this committee. It's in this committee tonight, so I think that kind of takes care of that.
Yeah, so we could say that it has come before Public Works tonight,
Yes,
and
so
we
we're
are
not
saying,
circumvented.
we're going to send it on to full commission for a vote, and in the meantime, we're going to chat with the mayor's office and our attorney and Michael and just try and get some of the math clarified. Phil, I'm looking at you while I'm talking, to try and get some of the math clarified in a spreadsheet so we can better understand and have that ready for full commission discussion. Does that sound right? Okay. You got that? All right. Thank you, Chairman.
That wasn't actually part of the motion, though, right? That's just what needs to be done. Yes. Okay, any other questions or discussion on the motion? Okay, we have a proper motion and a second to send this to the commission to be decided on whether they want to ratify it or not at our next commission meeting. So all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Not money. We can, I mean, this. Okay. Okay, we'll do a roll call. I'm flexible.
Commissioner Kush,
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson,
Aye. Okay, it's going to the commission. And if you would, I'm sure you will, everyone just reach out to the mayor's office with any other concerns about this before the commission meeting. And next on the agenda, we have the Planning and Engineering Director, Doug DeMasi. I'm sorry. Yes, they are. I'm sorry, I checked them all. Highway Department, Superintendent Greg Brooks. here or not? Okay. Okay, come up, state your name, please, and welcome. Sorry.
Ben Friend, Public Works Engineer. I wasn't made aware of anything else other than this temporary construction easement that you should have before you. Okay. I wanted to make one correction. There is a tax map and parcel with the address 2506 Rock Springs Midland Road. We are not going to be doing anything on that portion of the easement. It's only those that are addressed Eaglesham Drive. This is in the Eagle Creek subdivision on the northeast corner. It's a 30-foot platted drainage easement. Greg, myself, and a couple other members of the highway department met with some homeowners out there after the May storms and small tornado that went through out there. I don't know if it was ever confirmed, but it sure did look like it. And while we were out there looking around, we realized that, well, we talked to one of the homeowners, and she let us know of where the water got to and everything. And as we were looking around, we determined that the easement that crosses these properties needs to be cleaned out, and that's all this is there's an access easement that will go back between two of the houses, and we'll just have the forestry mulcher on the skid steer and run it down the easement and be done with it. So just to open that up so that water can get out of the neighborhood.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right.
All right,
Passed.
thank you.
Thank you. Now we have solid waste and, sorry. Planning and Engineering Director Doug. Pardon me? Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry I had you up here and I checked you off. Go ahead. This is Matt Davis,
Thank you.
Assistant Director.
I'll start with June and then do July. Rutherford County Landfill accepted 186.19 tons of brush for a revenue of $5,641 in the month of June. We managed 572 tires in June for a revenue of $1,260. June total revenue was $6,901. Rutherford County Solid Waste disposed of 2,898.83 tons of waste from all sources in the month of June. 2,381.21 tons came from convenience centers and 150.68 tons from schools. We recycled 366.94 tons from all sources. That is a diversion rate of 12.7% for June. The landfill accepted 116.44 tons of brush in July. We managed, the revenue for the brush was $3,502. We managed 519 tires for a revenue of $1,076. July total revenue is $4,578. Rutherford County Solid Waste disposed of 3,312.63 tons of waste from all sources in the month of July. 2,691.54 tons came from convenience centers. 207.25 tons came from schools. We recycled 413.84 tons from all sources, and that's a diversion rate of 12.49% for July. This is our normal collection and recycling activities.
Any questions? Have anything else? Motion to approve. And a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you give us any kind of site update on our transfer station, what stage it's in?
Grant, I think it's called Phase 2. They're starting, they've got the forms up. I don't know if they've started pouring yet, but they're this close to ready to start pouring the concrete walls for the pits.
Thank you.
Planning and Engineering, Director Doug Mossy. Finally. Sorry for the confusion. When Matt was up here before, I checked him off in 2 different places. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Doug DeMasi, County Planning Director. Just want to start. You'll see you've got several files on the Planning and Engineering folder on your iPads. I put the reports in for the subdivision inventory for both June and July, since we didn't meet last month. I'm not going to go over the one for June, just to kind of give you an overview of what we're looking at in July. However, right now we're looking at total available lots. Again, these are recorded lots on the ground of 1,034. That's kind of been in the same range here for the last several months. Since January of this year, we started out with about 965, and then we went up to 1018 in February, 1064 March, on and on in April, 1044, 1050. Last month was 1133, well, June, 1133, and then this past month was 1034. We had a pretty stout month last month, as Director Bell had discussed just a moment ago. So that took a chunk out of the number of lots that we had. But we have seen a little bit more activity as far as recording of plats, larger sections of plats and things. So I anticipate this to continue kind of fluctuating, especially with interest rates the way they are. Of course, the Fed talking about the possibility of cutting rates now in the near future, that might have an impact. We'll just have to wait and see. So if anybody has any questions on that, I'll be happy to try to address those. If not, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll go ahead and go into our rezoning report. You'll see on our planning and engineering report there were 7 either rezoning or ordinance amendment cases that we considered in both months of June and July together. You'll be happy to know I don't have to go through all 7 of those. We only have 2 that will be going before the Board of Commissioners next month. The first of those is a piece of property located at 8200 Safari Way. This is near the town of Smyrna. Aaron Minnick for the River of Life Church. The property is currently zoned light industrial, but they are asking for a rezoning to institutional. They received a special exception by the BZA back in July of 2018 for a community assembly use or church use. A site plan for that church building was approved by the Planning Commission back in October of 2018. A revised site plan showing the location of a temporary meeting tent and office trailer was approved by the Planning Commission back in November of 2020. Of course, that was during the pandemic, and they've been operating in that structure since. We had a meeting with the applicant back in May of this year where he stated the church was in the process of opening a K-12 school. Unfortunately, K-12 schools are not allowed in industrial zones, but they are allowed in institutional zones. So we recommended they do a rezoning to institutional, which is where this application came from. You'll see there is a concept plan included with your agenda packets on your iPads. Shows 3 portable school buildings to the west of the existing temporary tent facility. There's also a future 4th building, but they're not doing that right now. That would be under a separate plan sometime later in the future. As far as access parking, landscaping, and all those things, the facilities that's already constructed as far as for parking and access will be utilized for the school. It should be sufficient for what they are proposing out there. We've had a number of meetings with and conversations, trading emails, trading phone calls with the applicant. They're well aware of what is required of them. So we've been working with them to get this through the process. During the Planning Commission's meeting, there were some questions about the number of students that would occupy the school buildings. They answered about 40 students with a maximum proposed right now about 60 to 70. There were also questions about when the permanent church building would be constructed, and the pastor answered he'd hope to be in about 2025. During the public hearing, one person did speak about the floodplain issues on the property, and it's true, there are floodplain and floodway issues on this property. The location of the temporary tent facility and the school buildings is outside of that, so they're aware of those issues as well. I will call your attention to a couple of issues that we did have that were in our staff report regarding an engineering report for the temporary tent. We have received an updated structural engineering report for that. There were also some portable office trailers that were being stored on the property for a friend of the pastor, a church member. We did tell him that the plan, there was never a plan to approve that kind of use on the property. They would have to be removed, and those have been removed, so I just wanted to call that to your attention. After discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote on that application. Our second request is for a piece of property on Midland Fosterville Road. The existing zoning is residential low density, and they are asking for a planned unit development for commercial explosive storage. This is actually, it's a new location, but it's actually an existing facility. The facility currently exists off of Shelbyville Pike, about 2.5 miles or so to the north of the subject property. They are looking to relocate to this area to help with any future expansion, things that they would like to do on the property. Plus, I think the property owner was having future plan ideas for the property that they currently utilize right now. So they're looking, the property itself is, sorry, let me look at that, about 71 acres, and they're only looking to rezone about 10 of it for planned unit development for these explosive storage. And I stated it is a relocation of an existing facility. There is a pattern book that was submitted with this. It is on your iPads. I can go into as much detail as you would like me to go on that, but they are showing a 1,200 square foot single-story portable office building, associated gravel parking area, some bulk storage areas, trailer magazines, et cetera, on the property. A chain link fence would also be provided around this to secure the site. And again, the applicant's proposing to relocate this due to the site meeting the requirements of ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Most of the questions we had, of course, there was questions about access, there was questions about landscaping. All those things would be consistent with what would be in the approved pattern book, and of course county requirements as well. The Planning Commission did have questions about the regulations for these uses. Staff did explain that all local federal regulations would have to be followed regardless if it's approved. Even if it's not specifically stated in here, they're going to have to do that. Separation and distance requirements were discussed. The applicant actually came up and kind of went through a more detailed explanation as to what they look for as far as distance requirements. It affects how much that can be stored on the site. What happens if they put the facility and someone builds within that? Those kind of things that, again, would affect how much can be stored on the property. He further explained the reasons for relocating their facility, as we've discussed. The fire marshal also spoke about the regulations that would have to be followed, but following the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. So we did have a neighborhood meeting, as we do for all PUDs. Actually, I said this at the Planning Commission meeting, and I'll say it here and probably at the County Commission. The applicant did a really good job working with the area, talking to the neighbors in that area and everything. Didn't really have any complaints about this. Had a few phone calls, just inquiries really as to what they were proposing. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
And to approve your report. Motion and second to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Commissioner Phillips, do you have something?
Yes. Mr. DeMasi, could you update the committee on the timeline for our long-term comprehensive land use plan?
Yes, sir. And I should have printed. I had a printout that I should have brought with me, and I apologize. We just scheduled our next Plan Rutherford Steering Committee meeting for September 16th. That'll be in room 205. And I don't have the exact dates beyond that in my head. Over the next few weeks, staff is going to be meeting with GNRC staff to discuss some of the issues and conversations we need to have as the first draft is being formulated right now. After that meeting, the anticipation is having another town hall meeting, kind of like we did either at the Lane Agri Park or MTSU, something on those lines. Also to have a second steering committee meeting, and there's been some talk about another joint meeting as well. The schedule that I have, we'll be looking at about October-ish or so to be moving forward with a full draft, completed and ready to take through the process for Planning Commission and County Commission review.
So if that timeline means before the end of the year, sometime maybe in October, the final draft could be presented to the full County Commission for consideration.
Sometime before the end of the year. Now, of course, in a perfect world, does everything go, meeting to meeting? No, of course not. I would anticipate there would probably be, some deferrals. Let's look at this a little bit more. But the goal is to have the draft done by the end of this year and presented to the Planning Commission and County Commission, something ready for you to review.
November or December.
Correct.
Thank you very much. One other question, if I could, Mr. Chairman. It's been 3 years, if I can remember right, since we've updated our fee and license permit, building permits. Could you possibly bring a report back to this committee in October as to where we stand and the cost that your department has kind of gone through over the last couple
Yes, sir.
of years?
We'd be happy to. We'd probably work with Director Bell on that because we work so closely together with all of this, so it all kind of goes together. But yes, we can definitely bring something back.
So with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that Mr. DeMasi kind of bring back us an update as to building permits and the cost, and just to update the committee as to where we are there.
Yes, sir.
That's next month's meeting,
I think you said October.
October. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Unless I messed up again, we're under other business. Any other business? Mr. Cush.
Thank you. To the committee, I want to apologize for letting my emotions run at a high level tonight. You know, I had gotten a lot of calls this week regarding this particular contract and how for a lot of us it kind of caught us off guard, and for some new to the committee hadn't even heard of the fact that the RFI was going on. But, you know, at the end of the day, transparency is the key to running a good, clean government. Transparency is that window where our constituents have the ability to look in and see how our government is run. And, you know, the teamwork is when the mayor's office and the committees communicate well together and function as they're supposed to. Without that, well, with that, you have order. Without that order, you have chaos, as we have witnessed tonight, right? So I just wanted to get that off my chest. I apologize. It just, again, it irritated me that we were not involved, either purchasing, budget, public works. This committee, you know, most committees meet once a month. Public Works met twice a month for over a year because of the solid waste was such a big issue. We couldn't get it all done in one night, so we stretched it 2 times a month. So, you know, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for all of us to put into that. And we had some major milestones that we accomplished. And for us to not have more input, or at least a chance to understand this big milestone, I was disheartened and disappointed. So it did hurt my feelings. So anyway, my apologies for letting my emotions run deep. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cush. I think we're all in agreement that we never want to circumvent our committee process. I mean, it is chaos if that happens, and I think we all understand that. We all strive to not let it happen.
Mr. Chairman.
And it does happen, though. So,
just one other thing, a text message from Chairman P. As you all probably know, his wife Pat has experienced some health issues over the last several years, and he had to leave tonight to take her to the hospital. And he was going to announce to this committee that her birthday is tomorrow, and we want to wish her a happy birthday and a speedy recovery. So if you guys can remember the P family in your thoughts and prayers, I know they would appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you. If you all would, just please keep Pat in your prayers, and Robert too. He just needs, well, that family needs healing and comfort. So keep them in your prayers. Thank you. We stand adjourned.